The Enchanted Wood by Enid Blyton Chapter 5 The Roundabout Land. One big, broad branch slanted upwards at the top of a faraway tree. Joe climbed onto it and looked down, but he could see nothing, for a white mist swirled around and about. Above him the enormous thick white cloud stretched, with a purple hole in it through which the topmost branch of the faraway tree disappeared. The children felt tremendously excited. At last they were at the very top. Joe carefully pulled himself up the final branch. He disappeared into the purple hole. Beth and Frannie followed him. The branch came to an end, and a little ladder ran through the cloud. Up the children went, and before they knew what had happened, they were out in the sunshine, in a new and very strange land. They stood on green grass. Above them was a blue sky. A tune was playing somewhere, going on and on and on. "It's the sort of tune a carousel or roundabout plays." "Joe," said Beth, "isn't it?" It was. And then, suddenly, without any warning at all, the whole land began to swing around. The children almost fell over, with the swing around beginning so suddenly. "What's happening?" said Beth, frightened. The children felt terribly dizzy, for trees, distant houses, hills, and bushes began to move around. They too felt themselves moving, for the grass was going round as well. They looked for the hole in the cloud, but it had disappeared. "The whole land is going round and round like a roundabout," cried Joe, shutting his eyes with dizziness. "We've passed over the hole in the clouds. We don't know where the topmost branch of the faraway tree is now. It's somewhere beneath this land, but goodness knows where." "Joe, but how can we get back home again?" cried Frannie in a fright. "We'll have to ask someone for help," said Joe. The three began to walk away from the patch of green field in which they were standing. Beth noticed that they had been standing on a ring of grass that seemed darker than the grass around. She wondered why it was. But she had no time to say anything, for really it was dreadfully difficult to walk properly in a land that was going round and round like a proper carousel all the time. The music went on and on too. Hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy. Joe wondered where it came from, and where the machinery was that worked the strange roundabout land. Soon they met a tall man singing loudly from a book. Joe stopped him, but he went on singing. It was annoying. "Hey diddle diddle, ho diddle diddle, round and round and round," shouted the man, while Joe tried to make himself heard. "How can we get away from this land?" Joe shouted. "Don't interrupt me. Hey diddle diddle, ho diddle diddle," sang the man, and he beat time with his finger. Joe caught hold of the bony fingers and shouted again, "Which is the way out of this land, and what land is it?" "Now you've made me lose my time," said the tall man crossly. "I shall have to begin my song again." "What is this land, please?" asked Frannie. "It's roundabout land," said the tall man. "I should have thought anyone would have guessed that. You can't get away from it. It goes round and round, always, and only stops once in a blue moon." "There must have been a blue moon when we climbed into it," groaned Joe. It had certainly stopped then. The man went off, singing loudly, "Hey diddle diddle, ho diddle, round and round and round." "Silly old round and round," said Frannie. "Really, we do seem to meet the most peculiar people." "What I'm worried about is getting home," said Beth. "Mother will be anxious if we're not back before long. What shall we do, Joe?" "Let's sit down under this tree and have a bit more to eat," said Joe. So they sat down and munched solemnly, hearing roundabout music going on all the time, and watching the distant hills and trees swinging around against the sky. It was all very strange. Presently a pair of rabbits lolloped up and looked at the children. Frannie loved animals, and she threw a bit of cake to them. To her surprise, one of the rabbits picked up the cake in its paw and nibbled at it like a monkey. "Thanks," said the rabbit. "It's a change from grass. Where do you come from? We haven't seen you before, and we thought we knew everyone here." "Nobody ever comes to Roundabout Land, and nobody ever gets away," said the other rabbit, smiling at Frannie and holding out his paw for a bit of cake too. "Really?" said Beth in alarm. "Well, we are new to it, for we only came about an hour ago. We came up the faraway tree." "What?" cried both rabbits at once, flopping up their ears in amazement. "Up the faraway tree, did you say? Goodness, you don't mean to say that this is touching this land?" "Yes, it is," said Beth. but I expect as this land is swinging around and around that the topmost branch might be almost anywhere underneath it. There's no way of finding out." "Oh, yes, there is," said the first rabbit excitedly. "If we burrow down a little and make a hole, we can see whereabouts the faraway tree is underneath, and we can wait for it to come around again when the land swings above it." "Well, we came up from the tree just where the grass was darker than the rest," said Beth. "I noticed that. Do you suppose that as the roundabout land swings round, it will come back to the same place again, and we could slip down the topmost branch?" "Of course," said the rabbits. "We can easily burrow down that green patch of grass and wait for the land to turn around, just over the tree again. Come on, quickly, there's no time to lose." All of them jumped up and sped off. Beth knew the way, and so did the rabbits. Soon they were back in the field where the ring of dark grass stood. There was no opening now, leading through the cloud down to the tree. It had gone. The rabbits began to dig quickly. Soon they found the ladder that led upwards. Then they made such a big hole that the children could see down into a large white cloud that swirled below the roundabout land. "Nothing there yet," said the first rabbit, getting out a handkerchief and wiping his dirty front paws. "We must wait a bit. I only hope the land hasn't swung on past the faraway tree altogether." The roundabout music went on and on. Then suddenly it began to slow down. One of the rabbits peeped out of the hole below and gave a shout. "The land has stopped going round, and the faraway tree is just nearby. We can reach it." The children peered through the cloud below the ladder and saw quite clearly that the faraway tree was very near, but not near enough to jump on. Whatever were they to do? "Now don't try and jump," warned the rabbits, "or you'll fall right through the cloud." "But what shall we do?" asked Beth in despair. "We must get on the tree before we swing away again." "I've got a rope," said one of the rabbits suddenly, and he put his hand into a big pocket and pulled out a yellow rope. He made a loop in one end and then threw it carefully at the topmost branch of a nearby tree. It caught and held. "Good." "Frannie slipped down the rope first," said Joe. "I'll hold this end." So Frannie, rather afraid, slid down the yellow rope to the tree. And then, just as she got there, the roundabout music began to play very loudly and quickly, and the roundabout land began to move. "Quick, quick!" shouted Frannie as the land swung nearer to the faraway tree. "Jump, jump!" They jumped, and the rabbits jumped after them. The roundabout land swung off. The big white clouds covered everything. The children and the rabbits clung to the topmost branch and looked at one another. "We look like monkeys on a stick," said Joe, and they all began to giggle. "My goodness, what an adventure! I vote we don't come up here again." But, as you may guess, they did.